Hello and welcome to another episode of SoFly. My name is Mitch. We've got Aldo.
Well, hey, everybody.
And we're very excited to be taking you into a conversation today with a rod designer from Redington to talk about what goes into designing and manufacturing um, exceptional fly rods. It's a bit of I'd say, a healthy balance between some deep dive into technical stuff and then some more top level information. So, trying to ride that middle ground so that we don't get too overwhelmed with, how complicated it can be, but also we don't sit in the, what's action mean world. We what's a rod made of? We get deeper than that. So we hope that you like it. And that's coming up very soon. But before we get into that, Aldo, what the heck do we want to talk about?
Wow, that was quite the
I've had a lot of coffees this morning.
Yeah, you're jacked. I had a protein
Also,
shake.
the weather is making me come back to life.
Yes, of course. This is coming out March 15th. So if you're listening to it, you're probably listening to it on or after that date. But we're recording this on March 11th, and it is 12 degrees Celsius outside. The sun is shining. The snow is melting, and we're stoked.
Yeah. Even like we recorded this interview last night, and I got to say, like, even doing that, I was a little sleepy. So if I'm a little sleepy in the interview, I'm sorry, but it's because I don't know. I was still feeling the depths and grips of the winter, but then as soon as the sun came out today,
And the time changed.
I'm remembering how nice it is to be alive.
Oh, that's good. My God.
So dark.
So
Canadian Canadian winters, if you're listening, you know what I'm talking about. But
well, can I say one thing? Maybe we can talk about this at the back half. But I'll see the conversation here. I thought you were gonna go ice fishing a lot, and you didn't.
I know I didn't.
And I know you were busy, so that's why. I'm just saying, like, this was such a good year for that.
It was a good year for ice fishing, but
let's talk about that after.
Okay, we'll talk about that after. First, let's get into what we have going on in the world of community.
Yeah. So again, this comes out March 15th. If you're listening to it on or afterwards, or if you're listening to it in June, I'm sorry, but this is what's going on in March in Ontario. Let's start with the Ottawa Fly Fishers. They posted their March calendar. Remember, some things are drop-in and some things are member only, but go to the ottawaflyfishers.ca to figure it out. And hey, if you're in the Ottawa Valley, why not? Join. It's a cool group of people doing a lot of cool stuff.
Yep.
March 4th, beginner fly tying / drop-in. Hello, beginner fly tying lesson at the Field House from Dan Lim, or just drop in and tie your own flies. So you can take part in the course or not. March 6th is the last winter casting. Oh my God, what am I doing? This has already happened.
Nice, right on. Hope it was good.
Hope it was good. Never mind. Forget those two things. March 18th, Phil Rowley Zoom presentation. Stillwater fishing legend Phil Rowley will take us through some tactics for fishing a new lake.
Nice. That's cool.
That's rad. Fly tying Zoom. Dan leads the group over Zoom in tying his latest creation. Okay, well, there you go. And then looking forward to April, our buddy Josh Butler of Courage Fly Fishing is doing an in-person presentation about muskie fishing in the Ottawa Valley, which you should definitely go to.
Yep, that's cool.
And then also Ivo Balanov, a guy that I fished with a couple times when I was a teenager.
Oh.
Ivo is part of Fly Fishing Team Canada and a company called Smart Angling. And he's going to be teaching a class on lock style fishing at Mitch, the Bing Retreat.
Oh, cool. Sick. That's still going, eh? That's wicked.
Yeah, do you remember the Bing Retreat?
I love the Bing.
It's near Westport, Ontario. It's a rad little horseshoe-shaped lake full of rainbows.
That's where I caught my first trout.
That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah.
If this is March 15th, that means we are in the throes of Double Haul weekend. And if you're listening to it, us right now, on the 15th, that means tomorrow on March 16th is Drift's presentation of the IF4. And if you want to go see some fly fishing films and hang out and stuff, it's all on driftoutfitters.com. Just check out Double Haul weekend. They've got a lot going on. They have a bring your own rod event with scientific anglers on March 15th, which of course is, as I'm saying this right now, which is where you get to cast every single line that scientific anglers makes, so long as you bring a rod, which is really cool.
It's really awesome.
But then March 16th is the IF4 and a presentation on steelheading by Jeff Liskey, who is a Scientific Anglers Pro.
Nice.
Now, I would like to announce something, and you can tell me to pump the brakes, but I'm going to do it because I'm just so friggin' excited.
Me too.
April 18th. Sotos is back, baby. And if
It's
you're on
back.
YouTube, check out my chest.
Maybe April 18th, somewhere around there, but we'll confirm the exact date. But
Maybe.
Sotos is back, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be
Maybe April,
so
definitely
awesome.
April 18th.
Maybe April 18th. But one of those days. Keep your eyes peeled for the exact date. But we're doing Sotos for another year. I don't even know what this is for. Year
This
4?
is year 4, man.
So get the wallets out because it's donation time. Protect the brookies and the streams that we love so much. It's
Big
going to
time.
be, I think it's going to be a Sotos for the books. Really excited what we got planned.
Yeah, of course, Sotos is the Southern Ontario Trout Opener Social, the brainchild of one Mitch Dusling.
Here in Toronto, come and
Yes.
celebrate another trout season with your friends and raise money for some good causes to protect the streams. There's going to be fly tying. There's going to be other things that are so cool.
Cocktails,
Beers,
Muskoka
fun.
Brewery,
And it's going to be,
raffles,
it's going to be epic.
music. It's going to be a
Yeah.
fun evening.
We've actually got some changes to this year's program that are very exciting. So I don't know. Get ready. It's going to be a great Sotos. So yeah. Is that all the news right now for community? Should we hop into the, if you're
can buy
watching on
this
YouTube,
mug.
you can see the mugs, the new mugs designed by the one and only Keith Redston.
And big thanks
Um,
to our pals at Yeti for donating these cups. We've got 75 in this year in the new Big Sky Blue color.
Wicked mugs. You could pick one of those up at
Ooh.
Sotos, and
Ooh.
all of the money will go to support fishes and the nature. And
Yeah. So we're going to charge $375 for these $25 mugs.
per.
Kidding.
Can you imagine?
Be amazing.
Anything for the fish. Okay, let's get into the main portion of this week's episode, which is with Brandon Morton from Redington, the rod designer, who has been hard at work developing some really cool new rods. Let's jump over to there and hear from Brandon right after these words. Brandon Morton is the hard goods product developer for Redington, otherwise known as the brand's rod designer. He joined Redington in 2023 and most recently had his first rods hit the market, being the EDC and the Vice Miami edition, which is a super cool rod. Check those out. He grew up outside Sacramento, California. He grew up spin fishing with his dad and grandpa in the little lakes around Lake Tahoe. For college, he moved to the other side of the Sierra Nevada to Reno, where he earned his undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Nevada. It was during college where he really fell in love with the Sierra Nevada and the Great Basin. He took up skiing and eventually backcountry skiing. He was camping and backpacking all over Northern California and Northern Nevada, which is where and when he began figuring out this fly fishing thing. He would go to the Truckee River where he got skunked over and over and over again as he watched fly anglers on the river pull out fish after fish. Haven't we all been there? Pretty soon, he stepped up his game with a kit from Cabela's. That and his great uncle passed down some waders, a vest, boots, and a collection of flies. Flies he would lose to many trees on the Truckee River. Soon, though, his supervisor at an internship in Reno helped show him the ropes, helped tweak his cast, and get him on fish. And quickly, fly fishing became synonymous with camping and enjoying time in the outdoors for Brandon. How did this all progress, though, into career designing fly fishing rods? Well, his dream was to work in the outdoor industry designing gear that he loved to use himself. So he took the steps to make it happen, getting an MBA from Western Colorado University and eventually moving to Bainbridge Island, Washington to work for Redington. His first fish on a fly was a smallmouth bass, and his first time is today on SoFly. His first time on SoFly is today. I was so close to getting it right. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it.
Man, it's a long bio. You've done so many amazing things already with your life. A very educated fellow.
Well, yeah, as you explained, I really, really wanted to figure out how to get into this industry. Yeah, I had my engineering degree and was working a great job, but I was like, man, I would love to build cool stuff. So went back to school and now I'm here.
I love that, man. It's amazing. Before we get into everything, I want to know, like, what's the story with that first fish on the fly rod? Smallmouth bass.
Yeah,
I love
smallmouth
that.
bass. So yeah, I couldn't catch fish on the Truckee River. It's a tough river, and I was so new to the sport, just flailing around. Had a terrible cast, didn't know how to present flies or whatever. And so that supervisor at my internship, he and I drove out to this little reservoir, kind of on the Nevada-Oregon border, like way up in the high desert, middle of nowhere. And the Nevada Department of Wildlife stocks it with rainbow trout. And so he let me borrow his little float tube, and I went out there like kicking out, and I cast it like into the reeds. And I was like, "Oh, fish on!" Right, my very first fish on a fly rod, and I reel it in. It's a smallmouth bass about this big.
That's awesome. I love that. And what are the native species in that river, Truckee River?
In the Truckee River, well, so native species are Lahontan cutthroat trout,
Cool.
because it feeds into Pyramid Lake. But
Yep.
these days, it's more known for like big browns, and they stock it with some rainbows as well.
That's cool. That's cool. I love that. It's first fish in a trouty river, and it's a smallmouth. But hey, man, smallmouth bass rule. That's a great first
Yeah,
fish on a fly. Yeah.
it's a fun first fish. Yeah,
For sure.
now I've really learned to love smallmouth fishing. Like that is a hard fighting fish.
Yeah, yeah, big time. Okay, so yeah, I mean, before obviously today we want to talk all about like designing rods, what goes into that, like all of the thinking and
Yeah.
work behind that. But
So many questions.
in the show notes that we had when we were prepping your bio, it also said that you love fishing the alpine lakes where you're in Sierra Nevada. Like what was that about?
Well, I love backpacking. There's just something really special about going out into the alpine and checking out some really cool spots. And when I lived in Reno, our access to the Sierra Nevada is just it's outstanding in that town. People don't really think of Reno as that kind of spot, but Lake Tahoe was like 45 minutes from my front door. And so we'd go into some of the wilderness areas, and I would always bring a fly rod, just because there's so much water up there, and it's all been stocked with like little brook trout, little rainbows, and at this point they're self sustaining, but they get no pressure. And so
Oh,
you
right.
go up there and you just throw like ant patterns, and you can crush. And it was so much fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there's less of that now that I moved to Bainbridge, but
Yeah.
I'll still go up to like the Olympics or over to the Cascades and fish little alpine lakes with a 3-weight.
That's
Super
cool.
fun.
Yeah. Reno, it's funny. Like I think we were talking about this in Denver. I'm like, I when I think Reno, my head doesn't go to fly fishing.
Yeah. Well, people think Vegas, right? When you tell
Yeah.
them from Reno, they're like,
Totally.
"Oh yeah, Nevada." But I mean,
Yeah.
Reno's closer to Salt Lake than it is to Las Vegas.
Okay.
But obviously on the Sierra side, and we're right there.
I
And
mean,
there's
when
so
I hear
much water.
when I hear Reno, I just think of Mario, like Taco Fly, because that's his kind of stomping
Right.
ground. Like
Yeah.
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 And also he talks about the Truckee enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Truckee, yeah, Pyramid Lake is right there, less than an hour.
So cool. Like there's such a scene out there for really great fly fishing.
Yeah, it's tough. Like even as I was getting better, the Truckee River can still school me.
right.
But that's fly fishing, right?
Is that like a pretty technical river?
Yeah, it's a pretty technical river. At least for me. There's guys out there who know it like the back of their hand, but I don't know if I ever really got it super figured out before I moved up here.
Yeah, that's cool. Love it. Okay, well,
Apart from your uncle, is anybody else fly fishing in your family?
No, not at all. And so I didn't grow up around it.
Okay.
In my bio briefly, like I grew up spin fishing since before I can remember. But it wasn't really until I had moved up to Reno and I was like, what is this fly fishing thing that people are doing on the river? Where I really jumped into it.
yeah.
Okay,
What about now? Is anyone else in your family getting into it now that you're like
I'm starting
a rod
to
designer?
see them some stuff. But I don't know. Nobody's really gravitated to it, I guess. Like my uncle and his side, they were more into fly fishing and hunting. But yeah, I figured a lot of this out on my own, with the help of mentors, and it's been a really fun process to try to learn the sport that so many people were fortunate enough to grow up with. And obviously, now that I'm here at Redington, just the resources available to me are unbelievable.
Yeah, for real. Yeah,
and pretty cool.
That's
and that is
amazing.
where you're calling in from today, right? You're at Redington headquarters.
HQ.
Yeah, Redington HQ, which is essentially Sage HQ. I work here at the Sage factory in the Sage R&D room, but I am entirely focused on Redington, which is cool. It's a neat brand.
So, which I think is important to note that for a while, Redington didn't have a. Am I right in saying Redington didn't have a dedicated Well, your role wasn't like dedicated to Redington. Like they had rod
Yeah,
designers for Redington, but you're like just working on Redington, right?
yeah. So before my time, there had been a little bit of a break in terms of having a rod developer, and they've had developers and rod designers over the years,
Of
but
course, yeah.
I'm the first one in at least a year or two that I know about, um, maybe even longer.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
it was kind of a vacant space for a little while.
Right. So as you're, you have your background in mechanical engineering, then you go back to school for your MBA. How did you think that would have like helped you into a career doing what you're doing now? Like, why was
Yeah,
the MBA necessary?
yeah.
Because yeah,
So I have the mechanical engineering background. I can
yep,
design products. That's
yep,
what I was doing for an industry company, in like a manufacturing company. Uh, but I really needed like the outdoor industry cred, I'll say. And I
okay,
didn't want to give up my well-paying engineering job to go work like a seasonal gig or like a retail job or whatever, right? I
Yeah.
needed
yeah,
something to put on my resume that said like, "Hey, I know how these businesses operate," um, but I didn't need the design background, right? I already had that, and so I was listening to a different podcast and they interviewed someone who went to Western Colorado University and did this like outdoor industry MBA program,
oh, cool,
which at the time was only offered by Western. And I was like, this is the coolest sounding program.
Very neat.
And it really helped me round out like not only the outdoor industry stuff, but just an MBA in general, I think is really helpful to have in like today's, I don't
Yeah.
know, modern business environment, at least for myself, where I was so far behind the scenes with the technical stuff.
Yeah.
hmm
Um, it's helped me kind of elevate my skills and understand how the rest of the business operates.
Yeah. How was it when you started at like Redington, like, and how's it been since? Like, what's it like working there?
It's a really cool company. It's super fun. Everybody's here because they love fishing. And I've
Mhm.
never really worked somewhere where there was like this common interest that everybody's had, right? I had like a regular job and you'd go work a 9 to 5 and then on the weekends you'd go do whatever you wanted. But
Yeah.
here, like everyone's stoked on fishing. Um, and it's just been super fun. Um, in terms of kind of our
Like where you're
yeah.
heading and stuff like that. Like, there's exciting stuff on the tables, I would
Oh,
assume.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I showed up, um, Redington had kind of a vague direction, right? There are a couple
Yeah.
of products that were growing long in the tooth and were kind of obvious contenders for getting refreshed. Um, but we really sat down and planned out a 3 year plan for the brand.
Yeah.
That we're like, where are we right now, and where do we want to be in 2028? Um, and how that came around is kind of in my first couple months, we took a trip out to Forks, on the Olympic Peninsula to go steelheading. Um, and so we'd fish in the morning, and then in the afternoon we'd come back to the Airbnb, and we just had a whiteboard, and we just
Just
started
jam.
like
it's
jam,
awesome.
That's
right?
so
What is
sick.
Redington?
Yeah,
When people think of the brand, what are they currently thinking of? What do we
Yeah.
want them to think of? We kind of organized all of our rods on a board. And we're like,
Yeah.
so what is a multi-application rod? What are our current multi-application rods? What are our specialty rods? How do we
yeah,
categorize these two-handers?
hmm
Um, and we did a big state of the brand and then figured out where we wanted to steer that brand. Um, and then over like this last weekend, we just went out to Forks again, a few of us, to kind of reevaluate where we've come in that
Yeah.
year and a half since we first met.
That's cool, man. That's such a fun job, like you say, to be surrounded by people with a common interest that you're passionate about, and then meetings are like that. That's pretty sick.
It's pretty
it's
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
It's fun doing that. Map. We used to do the same thing for the restaurants. We do it for SoFly. Like where are we?
Map it all
Where are
out.
we going to end up in 2 years? Or
Yeah.
we're going to try anyway.
Yeah, it's
Totally.
neat to think really big because every
Yeah.
day your head's down on like a
Totally.
specific project,
hmm
and so it's nice to take a step back and be
Yeah.
like, how is this getting to where we want to go?
So from that, like, where you go from there? Like, what's it like being a rod designer? Like, where, you sit down, you do like whatever your vision, mission, values, you make a 3-year road map, then you sit at your desk in Bainbridge Island, and you're like, okay, now what?
Well, you need somewhere to start, right?
Yeah.
And so when I first came on board, I was given like a task, right? And that first rod eventually became the EDC. And so we looked at a particular product that we had, which was the Crux, and it was kind of due for a replacement. And it was like for a few different reasons. I think it competed internally quite a bit with the Sage Foundation, right? We're Farbrank, and so when we sell products into a fly shop, um, yeah, the fly shop is looking at it from a brand by brand basis, but they're also looking at it from a catalog perspective across all of our family of brands. And so the Crux, the retail price for that was $419, and the Sage Foundation is $490 or $495. And we didn't stand a great chance when somebody could opt for a Sage rod for $495 versus a Redington for $420.
Mm.
So not that the Crux was a bad rod at all, but like the positioning was kind of tight. And so we took a new stab at that product, right? What would a new premium multi-application fly rod look like for the Redington brand? And this kind of sets the tone as well at the top of the portfolio. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the task for that rod. And where I really landed is I want to deliver really high performing products, even if that means maybe stripping away some of the fancy cosmetics, right? So anyone familiar with the Crux will know the reel seat on that rod it was double anodized, and we did some fancy machining.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's just take all that out because that's extra cost. That really isn't changing anything about the performance of that product.
Yeah.
And in this new version, let's put the highest in blank material that we can, and then find some other ways we can deliver value that maybe aren't necessarily adding cost.
Okay, so the EDC, everyday carry, was your first project, and the whole kind of idea was to create a multi-species, high performance rod that fit a nice kind of price range.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I'm developing a rod program, every program has like this mission, right? It has an objective that we're trying to solve.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it in like issues and problems internally when we're kind of coming up with these sort of directions for a program.
Yeah. That's cool. So the EDC, by the way, is like brand new. Like it just launched recently.
Like a month and a half ago.
About a month and a half ago.
People are loving it. It's getting tons of good.
I
like, right? Although you love it. What do you?
I love mine. Yeah, I was gonna say I it's gonna lead into a lot of other questions I have about just rod design in general. But I have the 10-foot 6 weight because for our Great Lakes stuff, I think that's awesome. I also, it's funny, we're recording this on March 10th. David from Very Good Fly Fishing just so happened to post. We first got to try these rods in Oregon last year, which thanks for bringing me, Mitch.
You bet.
I know.
And David and I just had this amazing day on the water on the Stillwater Lake, fishing for rainbows, and David just posted a little video about that, and all those memories came back to me. But that's when I first fell in love with the 10-foot 6 because we were using it from a boat in the Stillwater scenario, but then I could also see the application, to our rivers here specifically, some of the more migratory stuff, whether it be the browns or the steelhead, and I think it's a great like I've only tried the 9-foot 5 weight and the 10-foot 6, although there are many different iterations of this rod, but both of those were great. Casting dry flies with the 5 weight in that Spring Creek, that was we can talk about that later, but that was an awesome evening because Brandon and I shared a section of river, and we were netting each other's fish, which was pretty fun.
Yeah,
super cool.
Yeah, that was really fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. But But yeah, so you sit, like, okay, so now you've got the project, you've got the EDC, of the kind of the problem you're trying to solve, which is we need to replace our highest end rod, multi-application rod anyway, and still make it perform like a higher end rod, but like you said, strip away some more aesthetic stuff to make it more affordable. But where do you start in terms of the performance? Are you looking at blank technology? Are you looking at graphite? Do you just have this like ocean of graphite specs that you have to start sifting through, that you're like, oh my, and then on top of that, maybe I should wait to ask this question, but like, where do you start? Do you start at the 5 weight? Do you start at the 3 weight? Like, where do your brain go first?
Yeah, so I'll pick it apart. We work with a couple of different factories, and they'll kind of narrow down, I guess, different technologies that they think would be good choices for this program from a cost and performance standpoint. Um, and then I'll go ahead and I'll get samples, right? I'll get you talk about like a good starting point. And when I think multi-application, 9 foot, 5 weight is the first rod that comes to mind, right? It's the
That makes
rod
sense.
a lot of anglers typically start with. And if you had kind of your most versatile freshwater fly rod, I would say it's a 9 foot, 5 weight. And so I'll get samples in different materials of a 9 foot, 5 weight. Um, and then I'll cast them myself, right? And more than just myself, I'll get other people on these rods. I would say I'm a decent fly angler, but I'm by no means am I the best fly angler out there. But we have some very, very good anglers here in this building. And we have a pond out back. So I'll go out there with some of the samples that I've
Yeah.
ordered from the factory. I'll go out there with some competitor rods, right? It's really
Yeah.
important to benchmark our products against competitors. Um, and then I'll go out there with current product, right? I'll go out there with the crux, and I try not to plant ideas in people's heads while they're casting, right? I just hand them the rod. I'll rig them up all exactly the same. I'll put the same reel, put the same line, and I'll try to eliminate all these variables. So the only thing that's different is the rod, and I'll just have them cast it, right?
Mhm.
I'll let them do a couple of casts, and then I'll say, like, what did you feel when you were casting that rod, right? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? What about it did you like? If you could change anything, what would you change? And then I just take notes. And I try to do this with a wide selection of anglers of different ability levels, um, and all the different products, right? I'm trying to build this mental map of like the state of 9 foot, 5 weights out there in this kind of price point.
Yeah.
And then um, I try to find the one that I think is the best starting point, right? This is the best material, and the taper is mostly there. It's not quite there, but I can get to where I need to go.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, we found this material that is like this really cool nano resin graphite um, that is it's super sensitive, tons of feel. Um,
What does nanoresin mean?
yeah, so
I'm like,
so
I don't know.
it's it's so graphene is like a single flat layer of carbon, and so this
Okay.
nanoresin has these like individual carbon strands mixed into the resin. And so when you roll that rod, um, and you put resin in it, right, to make it bond to itself when you
Yeah.
roll it, um, that has little graphite strands in there. And so it's like the resin is like the glue, and there's graphite in the glue.
Okay.
And so it helps like the layers of that rod bond to themselves even stronger than like your typical regular glue, if
Okay.
that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Trying to
It's almost like
simplify it.
rebar. It's like rebar and concrete almost, It's
It
like
is like
making it
rebar and concrete, yeah.
right.
Except that the rebar would be like I would say the rebar is made out of concrete, but that's not very strong.
Right. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, graphite's super strong, and if you're bonding it with more graphite,
And
you've created this really strong
yeah.
um, material that also has a ton of feel, and
Okay.
that's super important when you're fishing.
Yeah, I was gonna
You can
ask of
make
how
something,
it kind of like makes it feel different.
yeah, and so if you can create something that it's about energy transfer, right? And so you can make something that's um, really strong, but if it's damp or dead, you're losing a lot of energy and you're losing a lot of feel in that rod. And so the motion that your arm is doing maybe isn't necessarily translating to what the tip of that rod is doing and the energy it's passing through the line. And so
Mhm.
if you have really good energy transfer, um, that's kind of what that feel is that you're looking for in a rod, and that's typically done in material more than it's done in tapers.
Really? Okay. So the material, this nano, uh, nano
Resin.
Nanoresin
resin
graphite,
Gra-
graphite,
yeah,
super strong, but also because of its composition, it is got this kind of variations in feel. So you can, and then plus taper will make it. You can change it, kind of how
yeah,
it
and
performs.
so taper adjusts action, um, and material also will do action, right? Something that's kind of these newer age materials that you get more efficient energy transfer tend to be faster um,
Hmm.
than the older outgoing materials. Um, but taper is kind of your other tool there to adjust how a rod feels.
Okay.
Got it.
Yeah,
So then I'm just going to keep oversimplifying the steps
yeah.
here.
Please do. Yeah,
Yeah. Because obviously there's a lot that goes into this, clearly, but we only have an hour. So, all right. So you have this amazing meeting. You set out your 3-year plan. They're like, well, part of that 3-year plan is this rod. You get the rod assignment. You get a graphite you're really excited about. You order some samples in. You're starting to work your way through the samples. At what point do you start being like, okay, this is the material that I want to work with? And, you know, yeah, I guess
Mhm.
what would be after that? Like once you're like, yep, this is the material I definitely want to work with. Where do you go from there?
yeah. So then I'll look at. Um, I was benchmarking this program against the Crux, right? Right, the
Right.
one that it's it's not indirectly replacing, I'll say.
Mhm.
Um, and how can we improve upon this, right? I don't want to in this role. I really don't want to take an existing product and slap a new coat of paint on it and tell
Yeah.
somebody that's new. That's wrong. It's deceiving. It's gross.
Yeah.
Um, we're not delivering value to our customers by not
Just
building better products, right?
totally. Yeah.
Um, and in the Crux, in particular, um, I noticed that in some people's casts, the rod was inputting extra vibrations into the line that they weren't putting intentionally. Right? They
Yeah.
would cast, and then it would leave a little sine wave in their line as it was coming through the guides.
And are you
Um,
recording people casting? Is that how you're
I'll
understanding
do it on
that?
my phone
Yeah.
sometimes, but usually I'm just standing there taking
Taking
notes,
notes. Yeah.
right? And I saw this a few times, and this is these waves would make their way to the tip of the line, and then it
Mhm.
would shoot it out left or right.
Right.
Hmm.
And so I went back to our I went back to the in the R&D room. We have an action board, right? And so this is a static board that will put you mount a rod by the butt, and
Yeah.
then you hang a weight on the tip of the rod, and then that rod will bend and arc down, and you can compare different rods by mounting them this way, right? You can see a rod that has a really soft midsection will bend steeper early on
Mhm.
versus a rod that does a pretty stiff midsection where it
Mhm.
stays flat.
Hmm.
Um, and you can see these differences all the way throughout the rod, right? with a 4-section fly rod, you can adjust each one of those sections. Um, and so you can tweak like the second section, you can tweak the tip. And so with these vibrations, I came to the conclusion that I think the tip on the crux um, was a little too stiff for some of the people who were casting that rod. It was imparting a lot of energy into that line, and some casters can work their way around it. But I thought for like the Redington consumer, who's probably pretty average fly caster, right?
Mhm.
Um, I want to make a rod that's really good for a really average fly caster,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so I softened that tip compared to the outgoing crux, um, so that the energy transfer felt a lot smoother and was more accurate,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
So
that's
like,
not to say that like it's not good for a good caster.
no.
Um, but good casters don't have to like fight it and adjust their stroke to prevent it from happening. And if you're like your average caster, it's just easier to get along with.
Or like someone like me who's got like a really good cast every 15 casts. Can use
Right?
this rod, and now I got a really good cast every like 8 casts.
Exactly.
Yeah, or even more than that.
Yeah, and it makes it more forgiving, I guess, is the
Yeah.
word that I'll say.
Right.
You can get away with more. Um, it tracks a lot better. It's a lot smoother. Your presentation is a lot softer. Um, and that's just by like taking that tip and softening it just a little bit.
Crazy. And you
That's
soften
so
it
cool.
by changing the taper?
Yeah,
Kind of. There's
yeah,
probably more to it than that, and I'm oversimplifying, but
yeah. And there's all kinds of little tweaks you can make with
gotcha.
how you wrap it, and the mandrel that you wrap it around, and
Yeah.
um, tons of little inputs. And
That's so
then
cool.
that's kind of a balance between where I work, where I'm kind of on the upfront design side, and then our factory, who's really doing the manufacturing.
So do you
Right.
like design these rods by do you actually work on like physical tapers and stuff, or do you do
I'm
it on paper?
Yeah, I'm not. I just do most of the design work. Like physical cosmetics is mostly done in Illustrator,
Yeah.
um, and then I keep track of a lot of the data stuff in Excel because I that's a
Gotcha.
really efficient way to be
So you
like
kind of like
information
build
dump.
Yeah, yeah, you like build the rod on paper kind of, like the actual like
Essentially,
specs are on
yeah,
a sheet. Gotcha. Okay.
totally.
Yeah. But then you kind of have these blanks that you fiddle with to kind of figure out what feels right and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and usually those are like completed rods.
Okay.
I'll have them put guides on it because you can kind of do all the theoretical stuff that you want, but
Yeah.
you just gotta cast the thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How much does line technology go into
Huge.
your right? Because it's like it's kind of this chicken and egg scenario where it's like, well, you can't get a fly rod, you can't cast a fly rod without fly line,
Yeah,
but
I think
so it's like
the dirty secret in fly fishing is that personally, I think lines are probably 85-90% of it.
okay. So then are you right? So you've got this 9 foot 5 weight that you're trying to design. I mean, we haven't even gotten to the rest of the rod lineup or
Yeah.
whatever, but like, are you testing that against obviously Farbank owns Rio, so you've got all
Hmm.
of Rio's technology at your fingertips, but are you looking at other lines in the market to make sure that it can also handle different tech or
Yeah. All rods can handle all brands lines.
right?
But you're right, right? Farbank does own Rio, and so our access to Rio lines is super helpful. And so again, with these programs, I will kind of pick your ideal line per se,
Mhm.
and I'm kind of building it around this line, and obviously I'm benchmarking it against other lines that that kind of angler would be fishing with. But for instance, that EDC was designed around the Rio Gold at the
Right.
time.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, and we try to do like these really core lines,
Yeah.
right? Most freshwater rods from Farbank are tested with the Rio Gold, right? It's a
Got it.
it's not a line size heavy at all in the way that a lot of lines are, and it has a really long head,
Mhm.
which makes it I would say one of the more challenging lines to cast because it's not doing a lot of work, inherent work to help you. Um, if you start adding
It doesn't
line
have like a massive
weights,
shooting head or anything.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so you need a good rod to cast that line efficiently, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. Um,
Yeah.
they lines can help you out in a lot of ways. And so with the EDC, we designed it around the Rio Gold for a saltwater program. That's typically the Rio Bonefish taper, which is kind of like the gold of the salt, sorta.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, did you try any like I don't know, more one-off Rio lines on the EDC just to see what would happen?
Yeah, so this is where it really helps to go out and fish the product too. Um, so you can throw on like a technical trout line. You can throw on a double taper line, for
Yeah.
instance. And so these are other scenarios that you need to test when you're rod designing, rod
Mhm.
developing. Um, but if it casts a Rio Gold well, you can assume it's going to cast a lot of these other lines pretty well too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so you know now we're kind of what are we rounding second base here or third? Like, are we getting close to home?
I think we're getting close.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So where are we? And
It's like you've got
yeah,
we had we're stoked on the graphite. We're happy
Taper's
with the
lined in. Yeah.
taper.
yeah.
You've
Happy on
noticed
the
things.
taper.
You've noticed things in the crux that you've now fixed. Um, you know, yeah, we're
What's
basically almost
next?
there. In
Yeah.
tandem, people who listen to this podcast, religiously, my mother, will know that we've been with Redington for a couple of years, and although Clay's never been on the show, we've mentioned Clay, who does a lot of the aesthetic designs
Yeah.
um, for Rod. So, at what point are you working right off the jump with him? In
Very
terms,
much.
yeah, okay,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
a
From the get go, we use a program called Figma. That's kind of our idea dump for cosmetic inspiration, right? Clay is the creative designer for the brand. Um, and he and I will kind of just throw different ideas and inspirations on this Figma board. It's just like this brain dump board,
Yeah.
and then we'll go back and organize them and be like, this is an idea that we really like.
Mhm.
And so, for instance, for that EDC, um, one of the ideas was like everyday tools, I guess. And so it was like a Leatherman and a Carhartt jacket and a tool roll and
yeah,
just all these like these heritage tools that are designed to be really useful and kind of accompany you through life. And I really liked that idea for a fly rod, and Clay did too.
Yeah, it's fun.
And one of the common themes was like these are everyday carry items, right? People who are familiar with like everyday carry culture, um, you'll see you'll see dumps where people they take all the stuff out of their pockets, right?
pockets.
And
Yeah,
they'll
yeah, yeah.
put
Totally.
their cell phone and their wallet and their keys and their multi tool and um,
Tic
we're like
Tacs.
Tic Tacs, yeah,
Anybody
sure,
have Tic
right?
Tacs anymore?
Hell
As a
yeah.
brand that
I
kind of
don't.
kind of
I love a
doesn't.
good tic tac.
Yeah, came and went.
Yeah, exactly.
But we're like, well, let's do this for a fly rod, right? When we're talking about versatility, let's build a fly rod that you could be comfortable taking anywhere, right? That's the most versatile fly rod there is. Um, and so that was the real cosmetic inspiration behind the EDC, right? The tan color was pulled directly from like the Carhartt duck cloth fabric material, and there's a ruler on the back, and that was borrowed from Leatherman, right?
Yep.
And so we take these little pieces of
Yes, there's a
inspiration.
ruler on the blank.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah,
No more lying. No
no
more
more
lying.
lying.
Well,
Well, maybe not
You can
normal.
still lie.
Yeah. That's cool.
Okay, so now you've got prototypes in what you think is, close to the final design. How many prototypes do you have to go through before you're like, okay, that's the one?
We're usually sampling cosmetics and actions
Okay,
simultaneously, right?
gotcha.
And so, with kind of that first round, we'll pick 2 or 3 of the cosmetics that we've kind of narrowed to, and we'll get each action type or taper in a different cosmetic so that we can both test and see how these rods feel, but also once you see a rod in person, right? It's one thing on a screen. It's different when you actually get it in hand and you put it up on a rod rack next to a bunch of other rocks, or you take it outside and you look at it in the sunlight. And by doing these things simultaneously, we can save a lot of time.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, it's funny. I was just like thinking, as fly anglers or whatever, especially, Mitch and I have spent a life in fly fishing. Not that we're like old, but still, it's been a while. And when you think of rod designing or rod building, it for me anyway, it would always go to like people, home builders with bamboo, and I've never really stopped to really think about, every once in a while you get a good marketing package from a company that they're really about the graphite that they're using, and it's really part of their marketing campaign too, their advertising campaign, I should say. You could look at the Helios most recently, but like every company does it. Loop did it with the 7X, where they're really like showing you how the graphite comes together and lasers
Science.
and science.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's interesting to think about, it's not just you're building a rod for yourself. You're building a rod potentially for hundreds, maybe even thousands of people, right? So, and
Yeah.
then of course you're building a rod spec for a factory that you don't work at, really, on a
Yeah.
day
Well,
to day
yeah.
and a day to day
Right.
basis. So it's really what your challenge is it's tough
You have
because
to think about
yeah,
who's going to be using this. Um, and
Yeah.
like their skill level, their use case, each one of these sizes too. So we haven't gotten here yet, but like we've designed a 9 foot 5 weight rod. The EDC has 15 different models of different
right.
different weights and lengths, and
Mhm.
each one of these models is oftentimes specific to a pretty narrow region of North America. Like there are rods that are pretty specific to the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
Because I'm from Reno, I think of like rods pretty specific to Pyramid Lake.
Mm.
Yeah, you have like your super versatile 9 foot 5 weight, but when you're developing, you have to think about each of these niche little fisheries and the people using them.
Yeah, yeah. So it's the EDC, but there is all of these kind of specific builds of the EDC for these specific places. So, you can
It,
fish. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
but
even
you
the six
have,
weight, there's a 9 foot
yeah.
6 weight, there's a 9.5 foot 6 weight, and there's a 10 foot 6 weight. It's like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
damn, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'll kind of move on as we're rounding third.
Yeah.
We've got our 9 foot 5 weight. At the same time, I've also been building the 9 foot 8 weight because that's kind of your other core
Totally.
size. And so I have these 2 rods narrowed down, and so then I can like extrapolate where these are, and then build your 6, your 7. In this case, we did a 490, and this is like we have our 9 foots dialed. And so then you add 6 inches and then you add another 6 inches to that.
Hmm.
And so we've talked about our action board. When you plot them on this particular family, every rod is I guess consistent to one another, right? If you cast um, the 10 foot 6 weight, you're going to have a pretty good expectation of how that 10 foot 7 weight is going to feel.
Right.
That's not always the case with rod families. Sometimes they'll adjust tapers between different models of the family.
Yeah.
But I wanted the EDC to be pretty consistent from rod to rod, so that if somebody was really stoked on it, they could get another model within the family and come to
Mhm.
expect
The same kind of
what that
thing.
should feel like. Yeah.
That makes sense. I like it. So then you put it out into the world and everybody loves it.
Right?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? And we were really excited for it. We were really
Yeah.
proud of it, but you never really know until it goes out into the market. And so far, it's been received really well, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Now, there's a question here I was wondering too, like this idea of designing a multi-species kind of multi-purpose rod versus like a specific rod. What would you find easier to do? Like this broader rod that has to fit a lot of different styles, or something like this person that's going to do this thing?
Uh, Personally, they're different.
Yeah.
Specialty is there's a lot of different kinds of specialty, and so when I think of like my own fishing background, I was fishing a lot of these multi-application rods before I joined Redington.
Mhm.
And so I kind of had a pretty good idea of what I was looking after personally.
Mhm.
Um, and when I hand that to people, right, people generally have a pretty good idea of what kind of a multi application fly rod needs to feel like.
Yeah.
Um, Specialty, on the other hand, really depends on what's so special about it. With saltwater rods, I had not done a whole lot of saltwater fly fishing before I joined Redington. And
Mhm.
so um, I've really started relying on some of the people outside of the building to go out and do a lot of that testing for me,
Mhm.
or I guess people within the building who've done a lot of saltwater fly fishing. Right, they
Yeah.
can go out in the pond and help me
Kind of
understand.
hone
Right,
in.
yeah, kind of the performance needs for a product like this.
Yeah.
And since joining, I've been really fortunate to have some of these saltwater fishing opportunities that weren't really available to me before. But that's something where I've had to branch out for help. Um,
Yeah.
and luckily, like there's so much knowledge in this building. So anywhere that I might be lacking personally, right, I have the resources to help me build a really good product. Um, I'm trying to think of other kind of.
Well, it kind of sounds like what you're saying is like you don't have a preference. It's more just like no matter what you're doing, you need to collect data,
Uh-huh.
and we'll see where that data comes from. It doesn't necessarily matter as long as it's valid, and then
Yeah.
you do
Yeah.
what you got to do from there.
And as a rod designer, I don't want to be super biased by my own personal
Totally, yeah.
biases, right?
Right.
I
Some
would be
Yeah.
designers,
100%. That's what I would do. I'd be like, I like this, and this is what it's going to be, and it would be so
yeah.
shitty. Everybody would hate it.
It's funny. Sometimes if you, at least for me, I feel like I'll get somewhere and I'm like, ooh, this is good. But
Yeah,
let me just benchmark it to some other folks.
yeah,
And generally, if I think it's good, other people think it's good.
yeah,
Um, that's one of the interesting things is generally people can come to a consensus, even if you're not really planting seeds in their heads.
yeah. It's important
And
not to, like you're saying, right? Because it's such a weird thing casting fly rods. It's so much feel. Like if you were
yeah,
to be like, Mitch, like cast this rod and give me some like really like quantitative, like feedback on it, I'd be like, just something about it, man.
something about it. It's
You know what I mean?
impossible. A rod in a vacuum is so hard to describe. But as soon as
Yeah.
you put another rod in their hand right after it, people can instantly pick up differences between
Right.
these two rods, right? This one loads deeper. This one has a faster tip. This one's more
Okay.
powerful.
Yeah.
Um, and they all have different words for these things because people don't, they just make up
Yeah.
words for what they're feeling.
It's whippy.
It's
Yeah.
whippy,
It's
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
noodly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
descriptor that's really
Yeah.
valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so
No, it makes
interesting. Yeah,
sense.
that's super interesting.
Because it is. It's just such like a, yeah. The point about casting two rods back to back, you're right. Like that would give you a benchmark to be like, oh, there is a difference.
Yeah, and it's pretty easy to pick up for people who don't necessarily get to compare rods back and forth against each other, or might not think that they could pick up on it. They'd be pretty surprised at how easy it is to pick up differences between different rods from within a brand's portfolio, but even like between different brands. They're all a little different.
Here's a question for you. I've got a Sage Z Axis that I bought a long time ago, back in the day when I worked at a fly shop, and I love that rod, and I've used that rod. And then years later, we got other rods and whatever. I remember I was out with Idis, a friend of ours, and he gave me his spey rod, and it was similar in length. It was an 8-weight as well, and it was the tip was very fast, and it was like casted. Like I was like, whoa, this is the weirdest. I hate this. Get it out of my hands. I never want to cast again. Even it was a great rod. What kind of rod do you like? Is it a rod that you just get used to over time, like me with my Z axis, and you're just like, this is what I like now?
That's a good question. I like different rods for different things. I think there's always merit to fishing, like maybe not the first rod that you ever had, but like the first rod that you fished a lot of time on, right? And you really kind of grew to build your casting stroke around that kind of rod.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to think, like my first rod was like a Cabela's kit.
Yep.
But I bought an Orvis Clearwater pretty quickly into my whatever fly fishing career, and I just fished that thing everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of those really versatile multi-application rods. And this was 2 iterations of that rod ago, and so it's changed over the years. But for me, fly fishing was like synonymous with like catching trout in the mountains, and so I always liked that trouty, versatile multi-application rod that didn't have any kind of crazy characteristics one way or the other, I would say.
Yeah.
Wasn't super stiff, tip wasn't super strong. But then for different occasions, I'm really looking for something specific, right? With the spey rod, you mentioned that like you tried this other rod that had a pretty stiff tip. I kind of like that. I kind of like the snappiness where it's like ding.
Yeah.
And for a shooting head, I think that works pretty well to have a pretty powerful tip. But that's
Big
my
time.
own personal stroke, and just different people like different things.
Well, that's it. It's just
Also,
preference.
you're
thing
fishing
too,
Skagit
right?
a lot more, probably.
A lot of
Well, we're fishing
up here.
Scandi, yeah.
Well, that line that was on that what I would call a whippier rod was a Skagit line, and I'll tell you, the casts bombed, but like they went out there. But I think like what you said about just like you fish a rod that you get used to and you like. I mean, that's got to be a challenge designing rods in that sense that sometimes people hold on to rods for a long time to put memories in those rods, and they get used to them. So it's like when you're designing a new rod, you almost have to be like, can someone pick this up after fishing maybe 20 years with a rod or 10 years or 5 years and be like, I like this, when they're so used to something else,
Yeah. I want to build a product that people want to have for a long time, right? I think people should hold on to products for as long as they can, right? As a consumer, right?
Yeah.
I think it's inherently wasteful to be cycling through all the stuff. And so I want to build a really high quality product that'll stand the test of time. And hopefully, like with that EDC, people will fish that rod for many years to come.
Yeah.
And like it so much they come back to Redington.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's cool
like,
that,
over time, sorry, I totally interrupted you there.
No, you're good. You're good.
Over time, technology's changed too, right? Flies change, lines change.
Yeah.
And so maybe the rod that you were fishing 20 years ago, lines have gotten heavier and flies have gotten bigger.
Yeah.
It might feel a little underpowered, right?
Yeah.
And so there's your incentive to go and upgrade, maybe get something a little more modern, designed for today's modern technology.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Like, I think even a decade ago, I would always recommend, people would ask, what single hand rod for Great Lakes stuff, migratory stuff. And I'd be like 10'7". But now I just say 10'6", just because they're stronger than they used to be, and you have more feel and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because technology's changed. They're stronger rods.
Yeah. More durable, fighting big fish too, which is pretty important.
Yeah.
It's cool to think though that EDC might be, in somebody's repertoire for many years to come.
They could, pass it on to
The next fishy generation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's really cool. You're like, I made that, and now this is making memories. I think there's something really amazing about that.
Yeah, that's the goal. It feels pretty noble to think that way, but I'm trying to build good product here, and we're trying to build good product here at Redington, and deliver it at an affordable price point, right? A good value for consumers.
Well, I think the brand has a lot of fans. I mean, from when it first came out to now, I know there's a lot of people that we work with anyway that I understand we're sponsored by Redington, but but even before that, a good friend of ours, Nick, who comes on a lot of our trips with us and takes a lot of great photos, like that was always his favorite brand. And I remember him being like, "Wow, I can't believe that now I'm shooting photos for this brand, because that was my first fly rod, was a Redington,
Yep.
And so it's kind of neat, it's neat.
Oh, heck yeah. Fins up for that.
Fins up. It's cool to come full circle, right? Fins up.
Fins up. I mean, like, I say that because I'm a Dolphins fan. But
fins up. Is that the Dolphins say?
Yeah, fins up.
Oh my god. Okay. Fishies 5?
That was really cool. Like, I'd probably go on forever.
Yeah, it's
like
a
really
complicated
could go on
thing
forever
in this world of designing rods on, mass rods. It's crazy.
We finished the process, right? That's now out there in the world.
Yeah.
Do we need to talk about cork?
We can talk about cork a little bit.
When does that come into the whole thing?
It's pretty early on, I'll say. There's different qualities of cork. Cork's really expensive, like surprisingly expensive.
Yeah.
And so
a rare commodity.
It is a rare commodity, yeah. And expensive cork doesn't have much pitting to it, right? With fly rods, they put filler in the cork, and this is like a wood material that has gaps in it, and really high end cork has fewer gaps in it.
Okay.
And so you want to put the nicest cork that you can, but man, stuff's expensive.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to find the right balance of like material and cork quality. Handle shape also has stuff to do with it.
Totally.
I've got a prototype floating out in the world right now where the palm swell in the handle is pretty large, right? And so you've got like your full wells handle shape, and then the part that sits right in the middle of the handle. It's kind of like holding a golf ball in the middle of the handle. It's so uncomfortable.
Back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just one of those really subtle little details that, like, visually, it's hard to even tell it's there. But when you hold it, you're fishing it all day.
You can
keep like your hand a cramp.
Yeah.
Do you, before we kind of wrap this up, did you ask this already, Mitch? But like, is there a rod out there in the world right now where you're like, wow, I wish I designed that?
Oh. Yeah,
or maybe or maybe like
he's in the Redington office right now.
Well, we already said Orvis a bunch of times, so I don't know.
I think generally most brands out there are making pretty good product.
Right.
I think we make pretty good product.
I would agree.
I don't know if there's anything that I wish I had designed. I am really proud that I was part of the Miami Vice.
Yeah.
Dude, that thing is sick.
It's so fun. It's so fun.
It's so fun. The 8-weight rocks. We tried the 5-weight in Oregon again.
Yeah.
Which was amazing. And we when we were recently in Belize, Ethan loaned us the 8-weight. We didn't all get to try it though. One of our friends snapped that up really quick and just kind of hogged it the whole time. So I don't even think I casted it. Did you, Mitch?
No. No, I did.
I mean, we were busy testing some other secret things.
I didn't fish it all day though, but yeah, I did.
But yeah,
it's a really cool looking rod, and it's that's a fun one. That must have been a really cool project to work on.
Super fun. Yeah. I know there's like a blog post that we recently put out, but when I was brought on board, Clay gave me like a little brain dump of a bunch of ideas that they had come up with over the years that just never came to the light of day. And one of them was like this silly little pun off of the Vice, and it looked like that.
Yeah.
And I told Clay, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. How can we make it happen?
Yeah.
He's like, you're the rod designer. You figure it out.
You're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was like, okay, right.
Yeah. That was
I
it.
can take that. And
Sick, man.
yeah, it was super fun. It was kind of difficult figuring out how to do the color gradient.
Yeah.
It's silly, but it's so fun.
Yeah.
But this was a problem that we had to solve for this program, and now it's kind of like a little tool that we have in our tool belt for future stuff.
Right. True. Like
that
the
I
paint-
haven't seen
paint
out
gradient.
in the market before.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
It's
like
super
they're
cool,
just
man.
a great, yeah, like the color gradient and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. Okay, let's switch to Mitchy's Fishies 5 now, which is 5 questions we ask every guest at the end of every show. Same 5 questions. We're going to ask you them now. The first Mitchy's Fishies 5 is, what is your favorite fish and why?
Oh, that's good. I like a lot of different fish. I really like the Lahontan cutthroat trout.
Okay.
That kind of goes back to that Reno
Yeah.
heritage that I have.
Yeah.
But that fish has a really, really cool recovery story.
Yes.
And they grow to disgusting gargantuan sizes, which is always fun.
Totally, yeah.
Oh my god, those fish are insane. Like, you see the pictures from Pyramid Lake. They're crazy.
Just nuts. Yeah. And that strain was effectively extinct, right? And then they were able to bring it back from the brink after they discovered like this remnant population in a little creek where it wasn't supposed to be.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. I love it. Number 2, if you could fish anywhere in the world right now, where would you go and why? Assuming it's the best time of year, best conditions, everything's amazing.
Yeah. Oh man, I would love to go somewhere like super exotic and tropical, like the Seychelles.
Yeah.
Just something ridiculous like that. That would be so fun. Somewhere remote. Your super salty flats.
Oh my god, it'd be awesome.
That'd be
Especially
really cool.
this time of year. My god, like right now. Oh my god.
Like,
Yeah.
right, specifically now.
Yeah,
Would be
right
great.
now.
Good GTs and permanent bonefish and all that other amazing stuff.
Be awesome.
Oh my god.
Number 3 is, what is one of your best or favorite fishing memories of all time?
This is pre-fly fishing, but I went up to the Yukon Territory
Hey,
with
Canada.
my little brother. Yeah, my grandpa, who I kind of grew up fishing with. When I was a kid, he would do a road trip up to Alaska every year in a motorhome. And we met him in the Yukon and fished for northern pike and Teslin Lake, and just caught just gigantic northern pike on spinners and stuff.
So sick.
So cool. I had never done anything like that, right? There's no pike in California or Nevada.
Yeah.
And I want to go back up so bad with the fly rod.
Yeah.
Oh man, it'd be so fun.
Yeah. That'd be unreal with a fly rod, dude. My god. Fish like that on an EDC? Come on.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I love it. Okay, number 4 is, why do you fly fish? What do you get out of it?
What do I get out of it? I like the challenge of it, right? This is a new tool that I didn't grow up with, and so I've really enjoyed the learning process.
Yeah.
And I'm always learning with this sport, right? At no point have I ever thought, yeah, I've got it all figured out. I really appreciate the challenge of it. I appreciate how distinct all these different fisheries are, and how there's unique things to learn for trout fishing, for smallmouth fishing, for the 100 different kinds of saltwater fishing out there.
Yeah.
I really, really like the challenge of it. And maybe that's like my engineering brain thinking that, right? Because it's stuff to learn and figure out. But
Totally.
That's what I gravitate to.
I can vibe with that. I get that. Okay, number 5 is, what fly pattern best represents you and why?
You asked me this in Denver,
Yeah.
at the fly fishing show, and
Is it the same?
I said a foam ant, and I'm still going to stick by that because
Okay,
that
sweet.
is
Foam ant.
the
Love that.
that is the fly of the High Sierra.
Yeah.
Um, I've fished a lot of those and caught a lot of fish on them.
I love it. Yeah.
Super simple pattern, but man, it just crushes up there.
Yeah.
Pretty special place to me.
That's awesome, man. Dude, that's great. That's a fun hour backed in right there. I mean, man, we covered a lot of ground with just I guess that what we would call the high level how to design a rod and put it into the world and also hear about your fishing life, man. It's been really cool to chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, thanks
Really
so much for
happy to
coming
share
on.
this stuff.
Is there
All right.
anything you can share that?
Yeah, what's
any
coming
secret things?
What's like the
I
most
mean,
top
I know
secret stuff?
because there's a few in
Yeah,
my house right
you
now.
know.
But
What's the super top secret stuff?
yeah,
Well,
what, do
edit
we
it
don't,
out.
what do we not know about?
Well,
I've never missed editing anything out before.
I can't disclose. I mean, you guys already know about what you fished in Belize.
Yeah, you got some cool stuff coming.
And I can't
I am-
announce that stuff yet, but
Right.
like
Yeah.
you're fishing a rod in Belize, I think people generally can kind of put one and one together about something salty.
Yeah.
And then although you know about what's coming up 6 months after that, you've got that pretty sick 11 weight.
Which could also tip off what it's for.
Yeah, right.
Being in Ontario with an 11 weight tends to be one thing.
Permit.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's permit, actually. Yeah, that's right.
Permit.
The Lake Ontario permit.
Yeah, climate change and all that.
Yeah, I will say though, the people should get excited about that. The salty stuff coming down the corner because
but also
really
go
bad.
and check out the EDC, find it at your local
And
fly
the
shop,
Miami Vice.
and the
Go
Miami
ahead.
Vice, and give it a
Please
cast
do.
because these are hot off the presses products.
So, like
that are
you
really
said,
dope.
Brandon, yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe that's a good way to cap it off. The EDC is in 15 different models, so from weight 3 to 8, right?
4
4
to
to
8. 4 to 8. Yeah.
4 to
In
8.
9 foot, 9.5, and 10 foot models.
Of every single weight?
There's no 4 weight in the 9.5 footer,
But it does come in a 10-foot 4?
but it does come in a 10 foot 4.
Ooh,
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty bad.
That's a good rod. Ethan is a fan of that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
that.
kind of cool.
That's
Yeah.
very cool.
Hmm.
Time to get casting, everybody.
Yeah.
Go find your EDC and your Miami Vice at a fly shop near you. And Brandon, thank you so much for
Like
coming on the
Drift.
show. Yeah, like Drift in Toronto.
Yeah, you should. You should.
Yeah.
And Miami Vices are like sold out everywhere. So if you can
Yeah.
find one, gobble it up and sell it on the black market.
The rod, really quickly, the rod, I didn't, because we'd seen the rod so many times, it didn't factor in that this thing comes in a case.
Yeah,
The rod case is super cool. I had never seen the tube.
Yeah,
Like the
the
white
white
tube.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the palm
Awesome.
trees
palm
on it.
trees on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
After the
it.
white suits, right? From the show.
course.
Hell yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Well, yeah, no, hats off on your, I mean, I think your first, I guess your debut products are pretty banging, dude.
Big time.
Yeah, so you should be
Appreciate
proud.
it.
Should be proud.
Yeah, pretty proud of it. And
Really love the 10
excited.
foot 6. Again, I haven't really cast much of the other ones, but the 10 foot 6 rocks.
Yeah.
Cool. Glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Radical. Well, thanks so much again, man, and have a great night.
Yeah, thanks. You guys too.
And that is another interview. That was a great chat we had with Brandon. It was really cool diving into what goes into designing a rod. You know, I feel like we could get really deep into it, but because I imagine there's lots of math and things like that involved, and like very specific things with, you know, like when he said nano resin graphite. I mean, I think that's enough sciencey stuff for us right there. You know, we could go deeper, but I feel like that's the.
Yeah, well, it's cool to talk about it a little bit because you always hear, you know, in rod, not just in fly fishing, but in fishing rod ads, they're always talking about, you know, the resins or graphite or the materials, and I feel like a lot of that is going to go over the heads of most lay people, myself included.
It's like hairspray commercials, you know, with extreme hold 3x technology. It's like, what What
What does that even
you know?
mean? So it's cool talking about that. I really
Yeah.
did think about it before we started our chat, but that sentiment of, Brandon could be responsible for, indirectly in a way, but creating heirlooms that
like
mean a lot to people.
Yeah, what's special about the job besides the fun of designing rods? Yeah, I think so. Like fishing rods are meant to hold memories, right? And so that's pretty cool that he gets to be part of that side of the fishing thing.
Yeah, I love it, and he's just a nice guy. Like I said, we didn't actually talk about it because we were so deep in the chat, but last fall when we were invited to Oregon to test out the EDC and the Miami Vice,
Yeah.
or the Vice Miami edition. I guess they can't say Miami Vice because they'll get sued or something.
The Vice Miami edition, yeah.
Yeah. But we can't. Or maybe we can. I don't know. Ooh. But there was one evening. It was our last day of fishing the fourth day out of 4, and we were on a spring creek in Oregon, and Brandon and I shared the section of stream, and it was cool. Like, obviously it was fun. The fish were rising. We were catching rainbows. It was amazing. We were netting each other's fish, which was rad. But the other cool thing was to actually
be the product tester and have that conversation with him.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's by the bank, and, much to that point we were talking about when we're like, you can describe what you're feeling, but in terms of when you're casting, so much of it is feel, especially if you lack like the vernacular to properly describe what's happening in the rod. It's cool getting questions from Brandon being like, oh, and have you noticed that when you do this, does it do that? And hey, does it do this if they do that? And then, it's cool. And he's like, oh, and how does it feel when you're mending this versus that? And then, we mainly had the 5 and the 6 weights, and I think a couple 4 weights with us. So we were able to try a few, but like I said, I think my favorite became that 10'6" for sure.
I got to try that rod out, man. Yeah.
Oh, big time, dude. It rocks.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember in the fall when, we took our buddy Oscar out, or it was December actually, steelheading, and he landed his first steelhead on his first drift ever, and it was like almost like a 10. It was like a 10-pound hen.
Was it on the EDC?
That was on that EDC.
Oh, cool! So there you go. It's already part of his first steelhead moment, which is probably remember that forever. So yeah,
I know I will.
I would hope he would. Come on, amazing. Oscar. It's an awesome moment. What are you forgetting?
What
are you forgetting for already? Come on. Yeah, it's great. I'm stoked to try that rod out, and it was cool chatting with Brandon. We hope you all enjoyed that. What do we got going on in our lives fishing wise?
Fishing wise, well, actually, I think it's March 15th. Bree is buying David from Very Good Fly Fishing's car.
Nice, that's fun.
So we're going down to New York to pick it up next week.
Yeah.
And I think we're gonna, if the conditions allow, if there aren't any blowouts, we're gonna go do some migratory stuff with Peyton.
Fun. Oh, cool. Very fun. When are you going? Next week?
I'm going next week. Yeah, 19th to the 21st.
Okay, 6.
We thought we'd make a little mini trip out of it, because obviously we could do this whole thing in a day, but like
we should, yeah.
Screw it.
And then she'll drive back this new car, and you'll drive back the truck.
Yeah, it's David's sick old Land Rover.
That's awesome. That's really fun. Well, that'll be a fun trip, and it's starting to warm up, so it's getting to be an enjoyable time to go fishing outside.
Yeah, like we said at the top of the show, Mitch, I really thought you were gonna. It was such a good ice fishing year. Yeah,
it was a great ice fishing year. I thought I was going to as well. I feel kind of bad. It's like not seeing an old friend enough because of work and other obligations. But I don't even know where this winter went. I mean, we went away to Belize.
I was like, sometimes you just have to go to Belize and catch the biggest jack of your life.
Yeah,
so
that was
don't feel
nice.
too bad.
That was pretty nice. And I got out one day with Idis and Matt. That was fun. And then I was like, I'm going to go out more. And then work and stuff got in the way. But I was recently with John Clipp and Paul Castellano on some open water. So it was winter fishing, but open water on the Niagara River. And that was a great day. We caught a ton of fish and had so much fun. And thankfully it was a little warmer. Guy. So nice. Paul was awesome. We just shot the shit all day and caught tons of fish. And the Niagara is just such a cool river, man. And getting to, just kind of bob around in there and hang out with John and Paul. And like I said, catch a bunch of steelhead and some big browns, it was awesome. was an awesome day. So yeah, thanks, Paul. I think I'm going to do a little day tripping video for that. So maybe it'll be up on YouTube soon. But yeah, that was good. That recharged the batteries a little bit.
That's good, man.
And then, like you said, it's going to be time to hit the water again. I mean, things are thawing, things are warming up, and yeah, it's feeling good. It's feeling like let's do this. Let's get outside and have some fun.
We've got to the end of the month. I've been seeing pike being caught at the lake.
Yeah,
I'm not saying where. The lake is a big lake. It's Lake Ontario.
It's a big lake.
We've got till March 31st until that season closes.
Mm-hmm.
It will, of course, reopen in May. But
yeah, of course.
And if if those of you don't know, that's Zone 20 in Ontario. Like
Very
Ontario
cool.
is its own zone. So, but
it's a big zone.
The ozone.
What? Doesn't make any
sense. The lake ozone. So we could maybe try that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Also, just go steelheading. Yeah.
At the Humber.
tis the time. Tis the time. But yeah. What do we got coming up? Well, I mean, we talked about Sotos in the beginning of the show. I'm pretty stoked for that. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm stoked about that too. That's pretty much it, bud. It's just like,
trout opener's close. Trout opener's not far away.
Trout opener's a month and a half away,
That's awesome.
And as per my yearly tradition, I haven't tied a single fly.
I know I got to start getting all my trout
I've tied more
organized.
saltwater flies than anything.
Well, it's like that time of year where like I don't know about you, but all my stuff's everywhere. It's like I've got bags for everything. So I've got like a bag for warm water bass pike. I've got a bag for trout. I've got a bag for steelhead, and I just grab them when I hit the river. Everything's in every bag. I open my trout box and it's got like pike musky flies in it. I'm like, when did that happen? What happened last summer? But yeah, it's like I gotta organize stuff.
I gotta organize. I'll say, I'm just gonna give a shout out to a non-sponsor. We're not sponsored by Patagonia. I sent my Patagonia waiter. I went to the store.
Yeah,
because they were like, I was like, I could patch them myself, but maybe they'll do it for me.
Yeah, because it's just on King Street for us.
Yeah, and so I went to the store, and they're so nice. We've thrown events with them before, and it's a lot of the same employees are still there, like after all these years. So that must be a great place to work.
Yeah.
And anyway, dropped them off at like December, January, because I knew I wouldn't need them over the winter.
Yeah.
And I just got them back today. No charge.
How are they? No charge.
Wow. Well, they're definitely patched. We'll see if the water, see if it holds. But
that's pretty cool.
Awesome.
That is pretty awesome.
I sent my my Patagonia rain jacket. It had like the zipper unthreaded. Was that the right word? Yeah. Yep, that's all repaired. No charge.
That's sick. Wow.
Like dropped it off at the store and then it got delivered to my house.
Well, shout out to them. I mean, dang, that's really rad.
I mean, I know that's Patagonia's thing, but like it's still. Isn't it unfortunate that it blows you away when you actually get good customer service?
In this day and age, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh.
Goes a long way, man. I mean, that's what it's all about,
Oh, it goes a long way, and obviously the gear rocks. But like,
totally.
there's, I don't know. I just that's
ready.
You're ready. That part of me is ready.
Yeah.
The waterproof part of me.
Good.
The flies, though.
Yeah. Well, get to it, brother. Come on now.
Gotta tie up some spring nymphs.
Yeah. I know. It's just so busy life.
Dude, March is crazy.
I don't know why I say that like I'm surprised. It's like that every year. But I'm like, why is it so busy? I can't work. Just let
go
me
away.
Go fishing a little bit. They're cool actually, but it's nuts, man. Like I don't even know what's going on. I'm going to Minneapolis tomorrow to screen that muskie film I worked on.
Dude, I can't wait to see it.
I can't wait to share it. And
I can't wait to give you your mug.
I can't wait for that
Look
too.
how cute this is.
Yeah. It's very fun.
That's cool. Congratulations, man.
Thanks. I can't wait to put it out in the world. It was a really great team put together, and I think it was a fun film about the passion for fishing for muskie. Not fly fishing, but just the general lifelong passion that we have for chasing fish. So I'm excited to share it with everybody when it's out. But yeah, I'm going to do that tomorrow. It's supposed to be 18 degrees in Minneapolis on Thursday when I'm flying back. 18 Celsius, by the way, which is like, I don't know, 200-300 Fahrenheit, something like that.
Holy guacamole.
Can't wait. The spring is coming and I'm feeling fine.
Took a lot out of me not to make a joke there.
Yes. Let's rein it in here. It's a family show. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thanks, Brandon, for coming on the show. And we'll have some more stuff for everybody soon. And we hope that you're all having the best life in the world. And we'll talk to you all soon. That's it for me, Mitch. Aldo.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
What? Comb your hair?
Oh, flip the script.